This episode of Keys to the Shop is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Whether it's espresso machines, manual brewing devices, or general coffee shop needs, they seek to pursue the most innovative coffee products, both domestic and abroad, to offer their customers. Find out more at prima-coffee.com. This is Keys to the Shop, episode number 31, Essential Advice to New Baristas. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop. I'm excited to have you here with me, and my name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show, and this show is dedicated to giving you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. And today we are going to be talking about some advice for new baristas. And a lot of this has been kind of rolling around in my head recently, things that I've learned over the years, things that I wish I knew when I was a new barista, and just questions that people have had over the years, things that I've had conversations with other managers and other baristas about. And by no means is this going to be an exhaustive list of everything that you need to know as a new barista, but it is going to help you navigate some of the things that you will experience. So what we want to do here is give you 10 tips that will help you as a new barista, things that you should be aware of, and then 5 pitfalls that you need to be aware of as a barista. All of this in the name of just knowing what you're getting into and what to expect and being prepared for it. It can be really hard to be a new barista. It's not like you're learning by yourself and your mistakes are your own. Your mistakes on the bar also affect other people, customers and coworkers, and the pressure of having to publicly learn. Even though you might have had some bar time in the lab or something like that, the pressure to have to publicly learn, oftentimes it just shuts our brain down, and there's a combination of just really wanting to do well and also somehow physically not being able to do the thing that you know you should do, or you can't even remember what the right thing was to do. And it can cause some of us to feel very despondent, I would say. And I'm here to tell you that tension is so normal. It's not something to worry about that's unique to you. Everyone who starts out in a new position and starts to learn anything is going to feel awkward, is going to feel pressure, especially, again, when you're in the service industry. There's added pressure from lots of different angles. But it's not always going to be like this. Eventually, things are going to start to tip in the direction of skill, whereas right now, you feel like you're stopping, you're starting, you're forgetting. It's that whole 2 steps forward, 1 step back feeling that nobody really likes, but it's just part and parcel with forming new habits and learning new things. So let me start you off by talking about the first thing that you should do as a new barista. And this applies also if you are just looking for a job in coffee to begin with. And that is, know why you're doing it. Set goals. What is your goal for being a barista? What is your goal of getting into the coffee industry? What do you want to get from the experience of being a barista? Ultimately, it's up to you to guide your own career. So what I think would be good is if you had a few goals that you wanted to accomplish. These can be long-term goals, they can be short-term goals, but if you had a few, and you just went on in the direction of your goals every day, you could end the day knowing that you've made progress on something that's really meaningful. But oftentimes, if you don't have a goal like that, what we end up doing is something that I do to this day, because I forget what my big picture goals are, what my short-term goals that lead to my big picture goals are. What did I do today? I might have been exhausted at the end of the day, but I could barely remember what I did. Whereas if you have goals, your end of day satisfaction will probably be higher. And you can look back at your employment at that cafe with a little bit more affection in knowing that it was pushing you in the direction of some greater goal. So first thing, know where you want to go in this career. But catch-22, you have to kind of be in the industry to figure it out. So hold it with an open hand. You can change directions. But that's the key right there, is you have to change directions. Don't let other people change it for you. Have a goal, hold it with an open hand, adjust it as you learn more. Okay, so that's number one. That's set goals for yourself and know why you're getting into this. Okay, number two, if you're a new barista and someone, who's just starting out in specialty coffee, you really are going to be made or broken by your mindset. So number two here is you have to craft your mindset. So what that means is don't just roll into a situation and allow the circumstances to dictate what your mindset is. Determine ahead of time that you are going to set your mind a certain way. Ultimately, I think the basis for good thinking for a new barista is have a mindset for the long game. Craft your mindset for the long game and be honest with your expectation about failures. You're going to fail, but you're going to have to determine to lean into that feeling of awkwardness rather than trying to alleviate it. So I'll tell you a little story real briefly because it could be a long one, but back when I was 19 years old, I was run over by a car. Kind of a stupid thing that I did. I rode on the hood of the car. I think I was just asking for it. Long story short, almost died that night. By a miracle, I was saved from death, and here I am today telling this story. But what happened is, among other things, major things, obviously, I hurt my leg, and so I needed crutches for a long time. And as anyone knows, if you've got crutches or a broken bone or something that causes you to have to not use your leg or arm, you atrophy. And you start to overcompensate with the one that still works. So in a similar way, if you feel weak in an area, if you feel awkward, it's going to be a natural tendency for you to want to lean into the thing that you feel comfortable doing. So if you want to hide in the cash register, which you're unique, most people want to hide in the dishes, or they want to hide at the espresso machine. What you're actually doing is you're causing the other parts of your profession, the other parts of your craft to just atrophy. You want to be well balanced. You want to lean into the awkwardness and not reflexively avoid it, and recognize that this is going to be awkward, but play for the long game. Don't expect to be perfect right out of the gate. Or ever, really. So craft your mindset going into this. Know that you're going to fail, but you're going to fail, as they say, fail forward. So having that big picture growth mindset, as Dr. Carol Dweck calls it in her book Mindset, is really key. Play for the long game here. You've got time. Be patient. So now number 3, everything is a lesson. Everything that you do in the store can teach you something, even if you're not going to do coffee as a career. You can learn a lot about yourself and other people and the world around you simply by paying attention, by absorbing what's around you. And you interpret all the things that happen to you and the things that you do and others do through a lens that you bring to the table. So when you walk in the doors and something happens that sets the day off in a negative way, you can choose to view it as a growing opportunity, as a lesson, something that informs your behavior for the next time for you to fix it and just adjust your actions. Or you can let it totally destroy you and kind of make it a bad day overall, when it only took 5 minutes for that drink to spill and then be cleaned up. But you can't shake it. It's in your mind. But that's the lens you're viewing your mistakes through. It's not the end of the world if you make a mistake, but it could be the end of your professional world if you let a mistake be larger than it actually is. I used to have this happen all the time. I would get angry at myself. I would be embarrassed. My face would literally feel like it was on fire because I was so embarrassed that I forgot this drink or somebody didn't hear me correctly. I just was really sensitive, and I can be very hard on myself. And so now, instead of just losing it over something, what I do is I just kind of observe that it happened and stoically but quickly fix it, clean it, and then reflect on it later on and think, what can I do differently so that I don't push the mop bucket that way, so it doesn't dump the entire contents of soapy water all over the floor during my closing shift? What can I do differently? Maybe I shouldn't put that cup on the edge of the counter next time. If all you're concerned about is being embarrassed or being perfect in the moment, you're not letting it teach you a lesson. Get the most out of this time as a new barista and have faith in your brain's ability, in your mind's ability to just absorb these lessons. But you're going to have to prepare yourself going into it to look at everything in the light of, hey, this is a lesson that I can be learning from right now. It's not just an inconvenience. It's not just a tragedy or whatever. It's a lesson for me to get better. Now, number 4, you're going to want to be curious as a new barista, but balance your curiosity with urgency and focus. What does that mean? Well, let me tell you. Curious can be a distraction. It's something that you should always have. You should always be curious about your industry, about coffee, about, serving the customer and helping your coworkers. Yes. Now, distraction comes in when your curiosity sort of takes the place of the things that you should be doing. Your first day on the job, your second day on the job, you're in the midst of all of this new equipment, all of this great coffee. You might get coffee for free and you're just like, I can't believe I can drink coffee for free now. Whatever. You might be starstruck by the baristas you're working with, the coffees you're working with. And it can easily happen where you might let the task list given to you go. So let's say this. How do you be focused? Well, first of all, it's about priorities. Everything that you do has to be subject to the next highest priority. And that next highest priority is always set for you by your boss. Your job is to do what your boss tells you to do. And then if you don't know what the next thing to do is, it's better to just ask and then have somebody tell you there is nothing to do rather than to assume that there is nothing to do and then fill that time with what you're curious about. That could be, I want to try this particular coffee on V60 that we're not really serving on the bar right now, but I want to try it. That might be good for a time, but is that good for the time right now? Maybe latte art practice is something, and I know for sure so many people take time to pour latte art when there are any number of next best things that they could be doing that have actually been written out for them in a workflow document, in a job description, but the curiosity that they have about coffee sort of overwhelms them and you just can't help it. And I've been there, done it. You have to be focused and have urgency while at the same time you don't want to lose curiosity, but always subject it to urgency and focus on the first things that have been given to you to do by your boss, by the authorities in your store. And as you grow, you'll probably end up with more freedom to explore those curiosities more. Now, number 5 is huge. This is something that is foundational to being a professional in coffee, okay? And as a new barista, this is difficult to do. For most of you, for most of us when we start, you have to give yourself grace. Grace is simply being patient with yourself and not pronouncing final judgment on yourself or your career, whatever, on the future, cursing the past. There's a lot of negative self-talk internally, not necessarily verbally, maybe, but there's a lot of negative self-talk that comes with awkwardly learning something. It's natural for us to say, oh, that was so stupid, or man, I'm so clumsy. I just can't get this right. And you just kind of vent and you proclaim these things on yourself, and you end up defining yourself this way. Now, maybe that sounds a little woo-woo to you, but I know from personal experience and from seeing others how often this kind of habit of being too hard on yourself or not giving yourself grace and being patient with yourself has held people back and they just plateau in their career. Even early on, it's impossible for you to grow and to thrive and to expand and stretch yourself while at the same time not giving yourself grace and patience in the process. You're not stupid. You're not clumsy. You're not inept or useless or whatever. You are, however, learning. You're dedicated because you're there. You're going through it. You're growing, and you're going to be better. You're imperfect. Just like the coffee you serve and the people you work with, you're imperfect. And the sooner you can extend grace to yourself, guess what? The sooner you can extend grace to other people, patience to other people you work with and the customer, it becomes this huge life skill that you develop on the bar. 40 hours a week of practicing grace all around you, you're not only going to end up a better professional, you'll probably end up a better person too. So now you're a new barista and you've got some things to work on. You've got some things to keep in mind. I'm going to give you a number 6 on the list of things that as a new barista, you're probably going to want to be aware of is you have to serve the customer for better reasons. It's a little vague. So my explanation is this. Service is a tough job. Everybody talks about this because it's true. It can be an emotionally taxing job because we want to give good service to the customer. However, I would say most of the time, customers are ambivalent to our service, no matter how good it is. There's the opposite poles of this whole thing. There are people who are wildly joyful about their experience. 5 stars on Yelp, extra tips in the tip jar, high fives over the espresso machine. These are the people that we wish just our whole customer base was like. I think we would wish that because we spend a lot of extra time in conversation and high fives if they were all like that. But then there's the polar opposite person who is aggressively rude and also somewhat inappropriate, maybe even to the degree where you've got to call in the muscle and the management has to deal with them. Which hopefully you're in a situation where you feel like you have the freedom to stick up for your dignity and not have somebody be personally abusive to you. That kind of thing does happen in coffee bars. And so many of you right now are probably nodding in agreement, and it happens far too often. Then there are people who are simply just, they're rude. They're not personal with their rudeness. They're not abusive, but they're just kind of a bummer. And we've all maybe made a project of one of these people that are just refuse to be happy, and we just want to make their day better. Yes, your goal should be to make somebody's day better. Create an environment wherein the person feels better walking out than they did walking in. You won't be able to tell that. It's not something you can just record on the way out the door. Like you can't scan somebody on the way out and have it spit out a number that proves that they feel better than when they walked in. But that is a legitimately great goal to have. So what do I mean better reasons? Better than what? A lot of times when we serve customers, we look for validation of our service in the eyes of the customer. And I feel like that is the wrong place to go. Instead, we should be serving the customer based on a desire to have a consistently excellent and empathetic and high standard for ourselves to the customer. And when it's reciprocated, it's all the sweeter. But when it's not, it won't affect how we behave. It will not make us say, well, screw this. I'm not going to be a service employee anymore. If somebody's not going to, praise my work in hospitality. No, you can't be swayed one way or another by a joyful customer or an ambivalent or even a rude customer. It all comes down to where are you placing value in why you create great service experiences. And the greater cause, I think, is just better service in our industry overall, practiced consistently day in and day out, creates a better environment overall. And it's better for the industry, and it's better for us personally. We feel better about ourselves for being the bigger person in the situation if it comes down to that. So don't hinge your service on the customer's reactions. Do it for your unshakable reasons. So yeah, that's an interesting one. And, we're not always going to be perfect at it. We're going to learn. But I've certainly been on the receiving end of somebody's rude behavior and thought, why do I even try? Why do I be nice to people if they're not going to be nice back to me? And the answer is, I can't define who I am on the bar based on this person, no matter how they behave. So number 7 on the list of things that will help you as a new barista to bear in mind: own it, fix it, and apologize later. So this is kind of tricky, where if you're in the rush of drinks and you've got a line of drinks and you make a mistake and somebody who is working next to you has to cover for your mistake, the best thing to do is to simply own the mistake shortly, say something like, "That's my bad," and then fix it as soon as possible. Like, fix it quickly. Later on, after the shift, while you're doing dishes together, you can create a more flowery apology if you feel like it's necessary, if it was a really big thing that you did that you feel bad about. But in the midst of the rush, if you make a mistake, don't dwell on it because it wastes time. And the thing that people who are veteran baristas around you value the most, and maybe this is not true for everybody, but it is being able to get things back to what they should be as soon as possible. It's all business at that point. This goes for restaurants. This goes for coffee bars, anywhere where you're producing a large quantity of something for a customer. It goes a long way in building rapport with people for you to first own the mistake and then work and throw yourself into fixing that mistake. If that means asking how you can fix it or how you can help, do so. But fixing it is the best apology. Like, changed behavior is the best apology. So if you know that you made that mistake, make plans to not do that again. Think about the next time you go on shift, okay, today I'll remember to write all of the milk alternatives on the cup where they're supposed to go so the barista doesn't have to ask me where they are. You should know that people will get annoyed at you. It's human nature, especially when you're busy. Our ability to extend empathy to somebody is not nearly as keen when we're super busy or when things are kind of going wrong as they are when it's slower. So don't take it personally. Just do the work, do it well, fix it quickly, and then you can kind of make amends later. If you do this in that order, then I think you're going to build a lot of rapport with the people around you, and their annoyance is not a final judgment on what they think about you. Just don't let it get to you. It's just part of being human and working together. And in the end, you're probably going to be best friends with these people anyway, so don't sweat it. Which brings me to number 8. Be mindful of the space you take up and the wake you produce. As a new barista, knowing where to stand behind the bar is hard. Most of us know if you stand far away from where the action is, you're not going to be in people's way. But then the people who are in the action are wondering why you're not helping. So that's not an option. You can't just go over to the end cap of the bar and hang out and ask if people need help and then pretend like you're watching out for this thing. So what you need to do is absorb what's going on the bar. Know what people's motions are. Some people are way more free with their elbows than others. Some people back up a little bit farther into the back bar as they're trying to get milk out of the fridge, so you can't really cross over into the back bar. So you got to be aware of this person. You're new. You can't really say, hey, can you not do that? At least you can't say that yet. But you have to be aware of the motions of people around you and know where you stand. Literally, where do you stand? What is your role? What is the path you have to take? So if, for instance, you're assigned to the milk station and your job is to finish the drinks and pour them and serve them to customers, and somebody else's job is to deliver drip coffee on the same pickup counter, you could easily start a conversation quickly with a customer but stand in the middle of the pickup counter and therefore not allow the person space enough behind you to drop off the drip coffee. So if you're blocking the way, you're not allowing the flow to happen. You're not aware of the space you take up. Also, if your job requires you to create anything, you're going to create a mess. And the wake you leave behind you will determine how conscientious you are of the other people around you. So if you're cutting off the top of bulk bags and you're just leaving them everywhere, and so that other people have to kind of move them to prepare a tea, or you're leaving milk pitchers unrinsed or in the wrong place, that's your wake. That's the destruction you leave behind you. And we all leave a wake behind us in work. But how big of a wake we leave determines how conscious we are of those around us and working to make this a smooth operation. So figure out where it is that you need to be behind the bar and watch people's motions. Don't get in people's way and make sure that you're cleaning up after yourself. Just be mindful of the space and your wake and you will eventually pick up the rhythm. You'll be preemptive in your motions and your thoughts. You'll plan out a path for you to move in and out rather than simply kind of walking over to somewhere and then all of a sudden forgetting and then standing there. Now you're in the way of the ice machine. So don't stress it, but do pay attention. Do get better day by day. Pay attention to where you stand, the space you take up, and the wake you leave behind you. Okay, everybody, so before we continue on with the rest of our show talking about the essential advice for new baristas, I wanted to talk a little bit about our sponsor here at Keys to the Shop, Prima Coffee. Prima is a specialty coffee equipment supplier that's based out of Louisville, Kentucky, right here in my hometown as well. And from their inception, they've set out to make the best coffee brewing equipment available to the general public. Their focus is on curating the best equipment for every need, from grinders to espresso machines to under-counter fridges, pretty much anything you can think of. And they put a big emphasis also on having the expertise to help their customers get the right gear to fit every situation. And right now, for Keys to the Shop listeners only, Prima is offering a discount with a promo code KEYS10. So if you visit the website at prima-coffee.com and use the promo code KEYS10, that's KEYS and the number 10, it'll give you $10 off any purchase over $75. Some restrictions apply. So you go to the website, prima-coffee.com, and when you get ready to check out, simply add the promo code KEYS10 to get that discount. And thank you so much, Prima Coffee, for being a supporter of Keys to the Shop, for your generosity and providing also the tools that we need to do our jobs in our cafes. So now let's get back to the show and continue talking about some essential advice for new baristas. So we're going through a list of tips for new baristas, essential advice for new baristas. We just talked about being mindful of the space you take up and the wake that you leave behind you. Now I want to talk about number 9, which is you have to pursue accountability. Accountability to who? Well, first of all, you have to be accountable to your boss. And for some of you, that's not going to be a problem because your boss is all over you and showing you how to work, what to do, how to do it. They're a strong boss. Maybe they are being a little aggressive, but better to have clarity than no direction at all. Some of you might have bosses who are negligent. They're not giving you a lot of direction. And in these cases, you're going to want to pursue the relationship of accountability to your boss, because even if they don't have an opinion that they initiate, they're going to have an opinion of your work when it comes time for a review or when their boss asks them how you're doing. Unfortunately, if your boss is like that, you're not going to be able to rely on them to accurately reflect your work, so you're going to have to generate that for yourself. It kind of sucks, yeah, but it does teach good initiative on your end, and it's what Bruce Tulgan calls managing your boss. He actually has a book called It's Okay to Manage Your Boss. And his book, It's Okay to Be the Boss, is what we discussed on episode number 28 on Keys to the Shop. But this one basically explores the idea of, hey, how do you as the employee take charge of your career and pursue the kind of relationship with those who can promote you, who can create paths of opportunity for you, where it's more likely that you can take advantage of those things. And this is one of them. Also, find a coworker. Find somebody who's really good at hospitality and learn about hospitality from them. Be accountable to them. Ask them to judge your behavior behind the bar with hospitality and tweak it. Submit yourself to the judgment of your peers, but not to just anybody. You have to be careful about who you're hanging with, and the culture of your bar will ultimately have some effect on you. If you enlist the help of your coworkers to help you in different areas, then you are creating for yourself a culture of accountability, and everyone has that available to them in one way or another. And then finally, you have to be accountable to you. Your goals and your reasons and your motivations may mean that you would do a little bit extra beyond what the checklist says because you want to just be excellent. So if you leave the coffee bar after closing shift and you know that you left off like 2 or 3 things that you like to do that are extras not necessary, but they really help, then it's a subtle form of self-betrayal. And I know that sounds dramatic, and it doesn't feel dramatic when it happens, but it's always a good feeling when you consistently do things extra that aren't expected of you, because now you're accountable to your own standard that you bring with you to every job. Kind of like that mantra of leaving a place better than where you found it. Like, you might have been shown by the manager how to close the store, but there's nothing that says that you can't close a store better than a manager. And also, a manager might even expect you to do it better than they do. So be consistent to your own standards too. So start with the accountability to your boss, then enlist the help of your coworkers, and make sure that you're consistent within yourself too. And a final thing with accountability, don't be afraid of feedback for sure. That goes without saying, but don't be afraid to accept compliments either. It's hard, I think, for people who are ambitious with craft of coffee to sometimes accept compliments because we can be hard on ourselves. I certainly am, like I said earlier, and it's hard for me to accept a compliment. If I say thank you to a compliment somebody gives me, it sounds silly to me. I don't know why. It feels awkward. It's like when somebody's not a hugger and they get a hug and they're just like, ugh, they just stiffen up and they just, thank you very much. This is weird. That's kind of the way I feel with compliments. I've worked on that over the years, but because being able to receive a compliment actually helps you feel good. And Lord knows that you need all of that you can get. There are going to be so many great times. You're going to have so much great culture and great community, and it will be made all the better if you can accept compliments. So number 10 on the list is be healthy. And this is a huge, huge, huge thing. I know from personal experience that you can be young and totally destroy your body, and it affects your mind, your emotions, and your perception of people around you. And it's no fun being sick. You know, most baristas are not making bank. You know, you're not really saving up for a car or a house on a barista's wage, even with really great tips. So missing a day of work sucks because you miss that money and you miss opportunities to grow too. So being able to not be sick, I'm not saying that you can just totally avoid being sick at all times, but I know for me, and I've seen for others, that because there has been like this nutritional lack or sleep lack or whatever, it has caused people to kind of crash and burn. And so make sure that you're eating well, you're sleeping as much as you can, stretch before a shift, take vitamins, give yourself thinking space, and get good nutrition. Don't just eat a cookie for dinner on the bar. Bring something nutritious with you that might be quick as well. And you could also regulate your coffee intake too. I know that's not always possible if you have to dial in for a closing shift, but where it is possible, make sure that you're taking charge of your health. I would recommend you go to the podcast, The Model Health Show, by a gentleman named Sean Stevenson. It's a podcast that I listen to, my wife listens to, and I know the guys at Cat and Cloud are big fans of this podcast as well. So that's a lot, and I hope these were really helpful for you. I did want to talk about 5 things real quick that we tend to fall into. They're traps for you as a new barista to be aware of this. First of all, the number one trap for people to fall into as a new barista is saying yes to everything. You have to be realistic about your availability. Learn how to say no. You have to imagine you're a coffee bar and you just opened. Usually the best and wisest practice is you have limited hours, and then you expand them as you increase your capacity to handle them as business increases. So you as a new barista, set yourself the realistic number of hours you can work per week. And if you can work more later on, you can expand your hours. And you can also get rid of hours too. But it's easier to add more hours to your availability than it is to take hours away, because now the bar has become dependent on those hours. And if you don't give boundaries to your manager, not all managers are super nice and empathetic. and they won't double check, they might work you to the bone if they can, and a lot of them will. So you have to be careful about what you say yes to. So just remember that saying yes to everything doesn't necessarily make you a team player, but it may mean that you're being played. And this is all for your health and longevity in the industry. Don't think that you're just being lazy by doing this. You're being wise and you're thinking about your future. Number 2 is letting other people hinder your progress. If you're not getting what you need from your coworkers or your boss or manager, go out and get it for yourself. Don't consider this just where the train stops for you if you can't get the knowledge you need about a coffee that you serve. The internet is a wonderful place. It's horrible and wonderful all at the same time. And if you know that you're not going to get educated about an origin that you've got on the shelf, there is Google for that. You can just find the information out and impress your peers and impress your boss. And you might end up being the trainer. Who knows? I mean, this has happened where there's been no standards in a place where somebody decides that they want to take for themselves the initiative, learn, and now all of a sudden they find themselves in a higher position. Don't let other people hinder your progress. Number 3 is codependency, or kind of being held hostage to by the job. You are not your job. Your success as a person does not hinge on this job. And you don't want to stick it out at a job when there's obvious things going on that are abusive. It is not a badge of honor to stick in that situation, even if you're thinking, oh, I'm just learning how not to do it. Find an alternative, work on an alternative to transfer to a new place. I know you can't do that immediately, but you can work on a plan that will, allow you to financially go forward. Ask for help from other people and get yourself out of there. You're not beholden to that store. You're not beholden to the behavior or passive aggression or even aggression of those in power at that store. Unfortunately, this happens. Not that you should go out there and be scared that it's going to happen to you. You just always have to look out and don't trust anybody. But feel free to call a spade and get out of there. Number 4 is blame shifting. This is another trap that we fall into. It's easy for us to blame other people for our mistakes. It's easy for us to blame circumstance or a situation. It's not really anyone's job to make you a great coffee professional more than it is yours. Yeah, the mandate of a manager or a leader is to lead you to a thing, and presumably that means a better coffee professional. But again, you can't count on that. You have to first make it happen yourself and take ownership of your decisions. So by getting a job, you're actually hiring them. The decision that you make with your time and energy to put in an application, in a way, you're interviewing people, you're interviewing companies and giving them permission to shape and mold you. That's a huge decision. And when you make that decision, you are creating an environment where you are in control. You don't ever give control over to the other person. And that includes taking ownership over your decisions. So be careful of blame shifting. It's a lot more productive to own a mistake honestly and to move on from there. And finally, compromise. Compromise is one of the biggest temptations that we have on the bar when we don't want to own up to a mistake, when it's really busy and we underfill a 16-ounce latte and we know that we could just put a cap on it. No one's going to know a difference except us. That's the trickiest part of this whole thing, is that you did it. You served that shot and you know it. And you're sweating in your bed at night, just tossing and turning. You shoot up in bed, just pouring sweat because you served that shot. I mean, not really. But the point is that giving yourself opportunity to compromise on the bar over and over again just creates a greater likelihood of compromise later in your career. We talked again about how you are the driver in your career. And so what you really need to do is make it so that compromise is just not part of your language on the bar. Know ahead of time that you're going to mismanage your milk at some point. There's going to be a bad shot at some point. The key is not to simply just wait for it to happen and see how you act. The key is to predict what it's going to be like and what your reaction will be. And your bar might even have stipulations for when a bad shot is pulled, this is what you do. When you don't have enough milk, here is what you do. And if you don't know, ask, what is the best practice for this problem that might come up because of user error? So don't compromise. Don't do the path of least resistance thing. We all know that if a shot has a path of least resistance and you open up a channel, it means that all that coffee is not going to be perfectly extracted. Now, put yourself in that puck's position. If you allow yourself a little compromise and you open up a channel of least resistance, then you are not going to be fully extracted. You are not going to get as much out of being a barista, and you're going to be imbalanced as a person, as it were, a shot of espresso. So make sure that compromise is not something that you allow for yourself as a habit. Okay, so all of these things. Believe it or not, there are so many other things we could talk about, and you are going to find out. Show notes for this episode have all of these listed out, so you can download that and have it printed out, carry it with you. So what I want to say is that the industry of specialty coffee is a really great one. There is a great community of people in this industry who help each other out like no other. You are going to have camaraderie, great culture, good times, good customers. You're going to have a good time as a new barista. All of the items that we listed here and talked about together are things that you just need to be aware of as you go. And as you are aware of them, it'll help you take advantage of those good times even more and get as much out of this time as a barista as you can. You might not feel confident, but you can act with confidence. You can act with kindness, sincerity, and not have it look arrogant because you know who you are. You know where you are and where you're going, and you know how you're going to get there. And you know that things change. You also, you're not just basing your entire existence on your first understanding of those things, because as a new barista, what I'll tell you is that 1 year from now, 2 years from now, you will look at the industry in a different way. The clarity with which you see and the depth of what you see is going to be determined on how you paid attention between your first day and that 1 year mark, or even that 2 year mark. And things change. Your goals could change. You are certainly going to change. I'm not the same person I was, thank goodness, when I was first a barista. And I expect 5-10 years from now, I will be a different person still. So as you grow, as you learn, practice kindness, sincerity, confidence, and a growth mindset, and you are going to be fine. And I will say, this is going to be a really cool trip for you. And I'm really excited that you've chosen to become a barista, to be a part of this great industry. And on the behalf of all of us who have been here for a while, I would say welcome. And it's really going to be exciting to see what and how you contribute. And it'll be great to find out how we can help you as well. So if you want to know more about the show, Keys to the Shop, just go to keystotheshop.com, where you'll find all of the past episodes. You'll find the show notes for this episode, some helpful links, and you can also email me at chris@keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS@keystotheshop.com. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're a new barista and you want to reach out and you need clarification about any of these things, I would love the opportunity to clarify for you, and we'll get back with you as soon as I can if you reach out. So if you like our show, would you go to iTunes and leave a review, leave a rating, and let us know how the show has impacted you. Let us know how the show has impacted your coffee bar. That'd be really amazing, and I would really appreciate that. So once more, thank you for joining me on the show. I hope you have an amazing week, and remember, above all else, show kindness, sincerity, give grace to yourself. Lean into the awkwardness of this learning process. You have what it takes, and you are ultimately in the driver's seat of this thing. And I know that if you do those things and you work hard, you're really going to make a beautiful career for yourself, and you're going to have a great time in specialty coffee. So go out there and kill it this week, okay? And as always, I hope that this episode, along with all of our other past episodes, have given you keys to the shop.